Hey, we're back with another devlog, and today we're going to talk about all the major changes that came in the PVE update. This update took me all year to complete. Adding a whole new way to play Nightmare Tag forced me to rewrite a lot of stuff. It took a long time, but it was worth it. The game has never felt more complete, and there's still more things I want to add, but let's just stay focused and talk about this update. Since the very beginning of this game, I thought it'd be cool to have monsters that aren't controlled by the players. It's also a very common suggestion. My goal was just to create a single player or co-op experience. I wanted it to have the same thrill of being chased and hiding, and I also wanted to add this yearning to want to explore deeper and to learn more. This could have gone so many ways, but I think where I ended up was the most natural. The loop of the game is pretty much the same as PvP. You start in a pre-game lobby where you vote for the game mode, you customize your characters, you test attachments, you view the scoreboard, and more. Once you've voted on a game mode and game settings, you start the game by pressing the button in the elevator. So it's pretty much the same start as a PvP game. When the game begins, you'll start on level 1, which is just one zone and there's only one hostile creature. To get to the next level, you have to use the elevators, and to power the elevators you have to complete an objective, which depends on the game mode that you're playing. Level 2 will be 2 zones big, level 3 will be 3 zones big, and each level will increase by 1 zone. Also, the objective quota will increase with every level. Creature spawning is a little more complicated because each creature has a spawning weight based on their difficulty, and every zone has a max weight capacity which increases with every level. This just means that every level gets harder because more creatures are spawned, and it's more likely to spawn difficult creatures if the weight capacity for that zone can carry it. Also, before the game starts, you have to vote for a time limit and a max level, so you want to progress as fast as possible. I find the thing that slows you down the most is finding elevators to go up and keeping your team together. My tip to find an elevator going up is that there's an elevator on every side of the level, so north, south, east, west, there's an elevator going up. So all you have to do is search the edges of the map and you'll eventually find an elevator to go up. And if your group splits up, there's a new feature called the portal orb, and I'll explain it later. Anyway, if you die, or time runs out, or you reach the max level, the game ends, and you return to the pre-game lobby. You'll be rewarded with monster and human XP based on the level that you reached and any new creature data that you collected. So the PvE experience in one sentence is complete an objective on every level to ascend as much as possible before time runs out. When I first started making this, I thought that players would want to save their progress, so I added a home button in all the elevators which would bring everyone back to the pre-game lobby and save the level that you were just on. This was also at a time when there was only one game mode for PvE, and that game mode was just to reach the highest level. All you had to do was bring a fish close to an elevator to open it, and there was no real objective on each level. I also made it so that the map and all the creatures never changed in between matches. I was thinking that it would be nice to memorize paths to help you ascend faster. All the creatures that you killed and objects that you left behind in the previous game would carry over to the next one. I was also thinking of adding a shop in the pre-game lobby to help create paths, like you could buy a permanent light source to keep a fish near an elevator, or buy a sign or markers to point you in the right direction. Although I did start going in this direction, it ultimately didn't help that much with climbing levels faster, and I found it more exciting to reset and randomize the map between every round. Also, resetting every time made it really easy to add more game modes. The core game mode for the PvE experience is Data Run. I really want players to feel like they're discovering and learning new things about this dream world. So there's this research robot named Zach, and Zach lives within the vents of the dream world. You just gotta knock on a vent to call him to your location, but if he's busy attending another player in another zone, he won't come, but if he is available, he'll pop out and assist you. Now you gotta smack Zach for him to give you a research tape. Only one research tape can be spawned at a time. If the tape is dropped or left behind, you can just smack Zach again to get a new one, but if it's being used and it's held, you can't get a new one. Once you have a research tape, you put it in the back of your scanner, you press trigger to start recording, then you actually have to point the sensors on the back of the scanner at a creature to start collecting data. When you scan a creature, it'll say the name of that creature and the state that it's in, and for how long you've scanned it for. And the research tape can only hold so much data. Every passive creature is worth 5%, with every new state being a bonus 1%, and each hostile creature is worth 15%. Each new state that you scan is a bonus 5%, but every second that you scan them is another 1%. Once you've collected enough data, you have to upload it by feeding the tape to Zach. Then the elevators will open and you're ready to proceed to the next level. Once you're on the next level, you repeat this process, but the amount of data that you have to upload increases with every level. Thankfully, more and more creatures spawn on every level, so you'll never run out of creatures to scan. I also have to give a shout out to Copy is Crazy from the Nightmare Tag Discord community, because they're the ones that came up with the idea and design for Zach, and did all the voice acting. So any compliments that have to do with Zach, send it their way. The other game mode for PvE is Fruit Run. This is meant to be a way simpler game mode. All you have to do is collect a certain amount of fruit on every level for the elevators to open to get to the next level. Level 1 is 1 fruit, level 2 is 2 fruits, level 3 is 3, and so on. Fruit Run starts really easy, but it gets harder with every level because the map expands, forcing you to explore more to collect all the fruit. Data Run could have all the creatures you need to scan in 1 or 2 zones, but Fruit Run might force you to visit every zone to collect all the fruit to get to the next level. So although it's simple to understand, it does get difficult. I want to quickly talk about the portal orb now because I've already mentioned it. This is a one-way portal that only humans and ghosts can use. Its main purpose is to regroup players, but it could also offer an escape for dangerous situations. To use it, one human must hold their hand on an inactive portal orb. Ghosts cannot activate a portal orb, but they can use it. Once the orb starts glowing, this means it's active, and all other portal orbs across the entire map on every level will start glowing, all linking to the activated portal orb. Now, when the next human or ghost to touch a portal orb in another zone will teleport to the activated portal orb. If you're a ghost and you teleport through a portal orb, your frozen body is also teleported with you. Through playtesting, I found that it was really a hassle to go and revive players that were left behind in a previous level or just died all the way on the other side of the level. So I added this feature just to make regrouping easier. The thing is, you can't talk through the new radio system if you're a ghost, but you can still hear it. So it's kind of up to the alive people to notice when you've died in a bad spot and tell you through the radio to regroup at a portal orb. Reworking the way that the zones are arranged was kind of the biggest part of this update. And it's not that important to know as a player, so if you get bored of this technical stuff, just skip this part. But it's kind of crucial for how this game functions, so there's going to be a lot to talk about. I think I mentioned it in another devlog, but the previous way that zones were arranged were that they were set at the beginning of every round and never moved until the next round. This meant that everything was loaded at all times, so big map arrangements suffered from performance issues and arrangement limitations. Before this update, I couldn't have the same zone twice in an entire layout, which is a huge limitation for designing a PvE game. I didn't want a static map that got harder and harder. I wanted the layout to change and expand with every level, so I decided to make this zone loading system. You can kind of think of it like Minecraft's chunk loading system, but I'll explain my setup a little more. Each level is stored as a list of numbers. Each number represents a zone. For example, 1 is backrooms, 2 is basements, so a level could look like 1, 2, 1, 2. Then I make a list of these levels which represents the entire map. Almost every environment in the game is considered a zone. The pre-game lobby, all the game zones, end hallway, portal room, everything besides the starting scene and tutorials because those environments never need to change. So with the map arranged as lists of numbers, we can use some math and a fixed grid size to calculate where to move all the zones. But we don't want to move all the zones into position at the same time. I really don't want to have multiples of the same zone. Instead, we only activate the zone the player is currently in and the next closest zone. If we only have one instance of every zone to use, the only limitation is that I can't arrange a level with the same zone directly next to itself. With this new setup, I'm already able to do more. Now I can add the expand map setting to every PvP game mode. The zone loading system by itself wasn't that difficult to set up. Networking wise, all I had to do was sync the list of levels, then the clients would do the rest of the work moving the closest zones into position. It's all the systems that work alongside the zone loading system that were more complicated to set up. The biggest thing I had to tackle was handling dynamic objects. The goal with this system was to spawn in objects only when their zone was active. Only the server and host can spawn and despawn objects, so the server and host is what's in charge of storing the saved object data. Every single zone in every level has a list of objects that are tied to it. Those objects save their positional data, object ID, and any other custom data. So when a player enters a new zone, the server is notified and spawns in the objects for that zone, assigning ownership to that player. Then when a player leaves a zone, the server first checks to transfer ownership to another player in that zone, or else it despawns and saves the object. This system actually had the most hiccups. It took constant tweaking to make sure I've covered most edge cases. But again, The end result was worth it. I'm now able to arrange zones nearly infinitely and properly manage dynamic objects in these zones. The big problem I had to solve with dynamic objects is lighting them. Unity's default way of doing this is light probes, and that's what I use. I tried the new adaptive volumes, but it doesn't quite work for my setup. In my setup, when you join a game, you load in all the zones which are saved as separate scenes. Right after that, I reposition all the light probes far below the playable area and rearrange them so that every zone has their own section of light probes. Then I created a few different light probe anchor controller scripts, just depending on how the object moves and how it tracks its current zone. Then I attach that to any dynamically lit object so that when it spawns, it also spawns in an anchor with it. The light probe anchor kind of acts like a lighting offset, like instead of sampling the lighting from the object's actual position, I want the lighting system to sample the lighting from the position where I manually placed all the light probes. Also, because all my environments are interiors, I was able to create a very simple script to help me place all the light probes in all my scenes. I just have to adjust a box around the zone that I want to fill in with light probes, and then I can evenly fill them in based on how far apart I want them to be, and then if I want, I can raycast check every single position to see if it's inside the geometry. If not, delete it, and I can also adjust them manually if I need to. Another cool thing I can do with this zone setup is use a random generation number, or I like to call it a seed. Whenever the map is reset, I also reset and sync a seed across the network. Then I created a location manager script which controls the locations for points of interest. Zack and the portal orb can have multiple possible spawn points in every zone, so I need to make sure that they show up in the same place for everyone. With a seed, I just need to know if that zone should include that point of interest, which again can just be saved as a list of numbers. So for example, if the player enters area 1 and this manager has area 1 in its list of numbers, then we just need the seed to get the random spawn position. And because the seed is synced across the network, the random position will be the same on every client. It's also important to note that every time I choose a spawn point using the seed, I also add the level and area ID at the end, so it doesn't choose the same position every time. Another thing this zone loading system had me rewrite was the elevators. They've always been a little buggy, so I'm glad I gave it the proper time to be reworked. The new elevator system has to work very closely with the zone loading system. There could be elevators attached to any zone connecting to any level, and they can only be placed on the perimeter of the level, and I only need to activate the ones that are attached to the zone that the player is currently in. This means that I'll only ever need to activate 4 at a time. I made it so that the elevator manager works very similarly to the location manager. So when the player enters a new zone, the elevator manager will check if that zone has an elevator connected to the north, east, south, or west side. Then I'll enable the corresponding elevators on that client. This starts to get complicated if 2 players have an elevator enabled of the same direction but on different levels, which is why I handle all elevator states virtually. The elevators that you visually see are just shells of an elevator subscribed to the synced states in the master manager. So technically all the elevators on every level are virtually present, but they're only ever changed when the player interacts with one of the shells. And just like every new feature, update, and rework related to the zone loading system, I now feel like I've given myself more freedom. Elevators can now be connected anywhere and work seamlessly no matter where they are. Doing all this zone stuff really made me want to remaster all the old zones. I've been getting better at Blender, and I've been playing and developing this game for a while, so I started to feel like the 50 by 50 meter zones were too small, so I started to remaster the zones to be 80 by 80. And again, this just gave me more freedom. I could have longer hallways, bigger rooms, and fit more into one space. Also, the original zones were designed when climbing wasn't in the game, so I can now redesign these zones with that in mind. I've also increased the human climbing speed in this update because of all the new climbable spots. Although this game used to have 9 different zones to play in, I could only manage to make 4 zones before getting too eager to release this update. Backrooms and basements were remastered, school and playrooms are completely new. So even though there's less zones to play in, the total size of all the zones combined actually went up, from 150 by 150 to 160 by 160. And even though I love these remastered maps way more, people are already asking for the old maps back. And I hope I've kind of hinted at the technical difficulty for that. I'd have to separate it into their own servers or create an extension to make them 80 by 80, but at that point I'd rather just remaster them all. Also, now that there's only 4 zones, I felt like I needed to redo the portal room. Representing every zone as a number isn't necessary anymore because I updated the voting display, and if there's enough room to display the full name in the portal room, I'll do that. So now there's only 4 hallways for every zone with the full name of the zone above every hallway. I'll add more hallways when I eventually make more zones, but I hope you guys enjoy the new zones as much as I do, and I'm excited to make more. Before I started working on any of the creatures, I first had to create the framework for it. For any creature that has to pathfind, I use Unity's navigation mesh system, which was really easy to set up in all my zones. To manage the way these creatures think and behave, I created a base system for a creature state machine. The state machine is kind of like the brains of a creature. All of them use it, and it makes the decisions and tells it what to do. When a creature is spawned, it's assigned a network owner, which is given to a player that's in the same zone, because it needs to make decisions when that zone is enabled, because it has all the collision and navigation data. Only the owner needs to run this state machine, but it broadcasts which state it's in across the network. This way, any event that's tied to a state, like a sound effect or an animation, just needs to watch that sync state ID to execute those events accordingly. The state machine just has to manage things like check which players are in sight, who to target, where to move to, and decide which state to move into next. And again, this only happens on the client that owns that creature. Anything that needs to happen across the network is either done through that sync state ID or some other method depending on what it is. Also, I knew from the beginning that I wanted players to scan and learn about these creatures, so it's important to have a clean and flexible base for all the creatures so that the scanner can read from all of them. And when you scan and upload creature data, you're rewarded with information. You can view this information at the creature display, which you'll find in the pregame area or the join area for Nightmare Run. Use the main star on the display to select a creature. A hologram of that creature with some info windows will be projected. These windows are new to the Star UI family, which is why I call them star windows. They're meant to display information, and pressing trigger will cycle through the tabs. These windows on the creature display will tell you how many times you've scanned a creature, how many times your team has killed it, how many times it's killed you, which levels and zones it's been spotted on, and all the states that you've scanned. The more you scan a creature, the more you'll be rewarded with information. It'll tell you things like how much damage it does, what triggers certain states, how long the state lasts, how fast it moves, and more. I think it's cool to keep a record of every behavior a creature has. That way you can reach higher levels because you'll understand the way they behave. Now I'm going to talk about all the creatures, but I recommend skipping this part until you've discovered all of them in-game first. I'm about to drop a lot of spoilers. Once I got the framework set up, the first creature that I started with was probably the most complicated. The idea came from a friend that made these pocket companions. I thought it'd be really cool if there was a bunch of them running around the map, and if they spotted you, they would alert the big one to hunt you down. The big guy's design ended up being a giant mouth, which should tell players that it relies on the little guys to see you. A big guy will spawn alone. It births out little guys at a random rate, and it sends out a reposition call once in a while, which will inform all the little guys of their new scouting position. This actually distributes them evenly in a circle around the zone. When a little guy sees you, it'll freeze and start screaming quietly. If a big guy isn't busy with another state, it'll charge at you full speed. Thankfully, the little guys are really easy to kill. You can either burn them for a couple of seconds or throw them, but as soon as you pick them up, the big guy will start chasing you. If the big guy gets within attack range and a little guy still sees you, the big guy will start screaming so loud that it damages you. The big guys are pretty much harmless if you stay invisible or you kill all the little guys. Outside of that, they're really hard to deal with. They got eyes everywhere and you can't even kill them. You can only slow them down by burning them. So for these reasons, I've given them a spawning weight of 3, which is currently the highest weight in the game. The next creature I created was the Traffic Skull. This one was next because it was the quickest to implement. When I first added revive heads into the game, I wanted it to be difficult to retrieve. On top of it spawning across the map, you also had to go touch it before you could start telekinetically moving it. Plus, it was guarded by this skull that would play red light green light with you, making it even more difficult to retrieve. This was all implemented into the game, but scrapped because it was too annoying to go through this every time you died or the monster hit and respawned your head. But I kept all the assets and the code for this very moment. I transferred the red light green light code into the creature state machine system, made it move around randomly, and it was basically done. You'll also notice similar code in the human tutorial when it tests you on invisibility. The cool thing to note about all the red light green light games throughout this game is that the more you move during green light, the more that timer speeds up and switches to red light. The Traffic Skull is an easy round ender because it does 100 damage if it catches you moving during red light. It still has to chase you down, but it moves really fast. If it's far away from you, you might have a chance to climb up somewhere where it can't reach you. But I've also made it really easy to kill. As a reward for safely getting close to it, you can smash both of its eyes, which will make it spin out of control and fly into a wall. So for all of these reasons, its spawn weight is 1, the lowest on the scale. The hider is kind of like a trap that follows you. It'll stalk you around when you're not looking in its direction, but it'll run and hide up against the nearest surface when you do look at it. Then it will wait for you to walk directly in front of it before attacking. It's nearly faster than you, so good luck trying to outrun it. When I first added the hider to the game, it was invincible and it wouldn't move unless it was either stalking you or chasing you. Also, it takes 2 hits for this guy to kill you, so if you're getting chased by something else and you saw this guy in your path, you could take a hit. But after playtesting with this guy a few times, it was clear that players needed a way to move it when it was in the way. So burning the hider for a few seconds will cause it to run away. Then playtesters started asking for ways to kill it. So I listened, but I don't want every creature encounter to resort to how do I kill it. A creature encounter should make you want to run away. I don't mind players being able to kill creatures, but I'm going to make it more or less difficult depending on the creature. At first I made the hider too easy to kill. All you had to do was get in the way of its path when it was in the runaway state. This would cause it to get too scared and explode. But as soon as this knowledge got out, every time players saw the hider, they instantly surrounded it and killed it. And again, this is not what I want the first thought to be when you see a creature. So I made it harder. The hider will remember all the humans it can see when it first enters the runaway state, so it can only be scared by a human that hasn't been seen yet. It's important to note that it can't see you when you're invisible, so if you time it right, you can still scare it to death while being in the same room. So now I think it's at a good state. Most players just burn it to make it go away for a little bit. They don't bother going through the effort to try to kill it. So I've given the hider a spawn weight of 2 because they're hard to kill, they're pretty quick, and they can do a lot of damage. The snail was the next creature that I added. This was also very quick to implement. All I had to do was find a low poly asset of a snail, and it only needed one state, follow. It's based on that hypothetical question. Would you take $1 billion, but an immortal snail will constantly be following you, and you die if it touches you? The snail in Nightmare Tag is basically the same thing, but you don't get $1 billion. It moves very slowly towards you, it can fly and phase through walls, and there's no stopping it or slowing it down. Once you notice a snail in a zone, the thought of it sneaking up on you should never leave your mind. It's immortal, you can't stop it, and it's instantly gonna kill you. So for all these reasons, I've given it a spawn weight of 3. I got the idea for the Librarian because I really wanted to do something with player voices. The idea is pretty simple. A Librarian will teleport directly in front of a player, kind of jump scaring them and go, shh. All the players that are in view will have to remain silent. If someone speaks, the Librarian will launch a book at that player. The book will grow and slam shut around that player, teleporting them somewhere random within the level. I think this creature is responsible for some of the funniest moments. A very common situation with this creature is that it'll teleport into a room with a few teammates, and then a teammate will unknowingly walk in and just say whatever, only to be teleported across the level. When it was first added to the game, the only way to make it disappear was for everyone to break line of sight with it. It's a stationary creature, so all you had to do was leave the room. But I found through playtesting that people would walk right up to the Librarian, ask how do I kill it, or try to interact with it. I was kind of thinking that you could grab the book out of her hand and put that book in a burn trap to kill the Librarian. But I already knew that players would do this as soon as they saw the Librarian, so I put this idea aside. All the Librarian needed to be was a quick jump scare that made you be quiet for a moment. Everyone having to break line of sight wasn't that difficult to do, and I really liked that method of making it disappear. But I felt like I had to do something about all the players trying to interact with it. So to keep it simple, I made it disappear when you got too close. I also made it so that you can still talk with the Librarian in the room, but you have to be doing the shush gesture, which is just like how you muffle your voice for the mimic. So because it's just a quick jump scare and a moment where you have to be quiet and its attack is non-lethal, the spawn weight is just 1. The glare is the result of a lot of ideas surrounding the core idea of a weeping angel, like a statue that moves around when you're not looking. At first I was thinking the glare would have multiple bodies to control and it can only move one at a time, but it would try to surround you with every move that it makes. I didn't really know what the attack would be yet, but I started with a 2-body approach with the ability to scale that number up. But as I was doing this, I realized I was just making them act independently, and a master script would tell them which one to move so it was only one at a time. So I scrapped the idea of a glare having multiple bodies and kind of pivoted more into a hive mind. So every glare is independent, but if one sees you, they all see you, and they all attack together. So the end result was very similar to the original idea, and it gave the same feeling I was looking for. And this especially works on higher levels when there's lots of them in the same zone, because if one sees you, then the others are going to try to surround you by teleporting just outside of your field of view. It attacks when you step directly in front of any of its eyes. It has 4 faces, so lasers will shoot out twice in 4 directions. And all of them attack together, which turns the place into a bit of a laser maze. You can smash their eyes just like the traffic skull, and it can't shoot lasers out of any of the eyes that you destroy, but it does have a random chance of regenerating an eye every time it teleports. But if you manage to smash all 8 eyes, the next time that it enters the attack state, it'll have nowhere to shoot the lasers out and just explode. Lots of players' first thought when they see a glare is to smash all the eyes, and this is somewhat easy on a lower level because you might only have to deal with 1 or 2. But people often get their hands clipped in the laser, and it only takes a couple of seconds for the laser to kill you. But on higher levels, you're going to have to deal with more than 1 or 2 glares. While you're smashing one of their eyes, the other ones will constantly be teleporting to get a better position to laser you down, and you'll probably end up sitting and waiting to recover health while they all close in on you. The best thing to do in a situation with a lot of glares is to escape when they're all shooting their lasers. They can't teleport when they're in their attack state, so you just have to break line of sight with all of them to make a clean getaway. The glare has a spawn weight of 1 because their attack is really easy to avoid, they're kinda easy to kill, and their difficulty scales when their population is higher, which only happens on higher levels. After creating all these creatures with unique abilities, I felt like I was straying away from the thrill of being chased. None of the creatures so far properly chase you down on sight, so that's what the crawler is for. The crawler will scream as soon as it sees you, and that means it's time to run. I've given it the exact same speed as your sprinting speed, so you can't fool around. You gotta hide as soon as possible. It's smarter than a little guy because you can't go invisible if it still sees you. It'll remember where you are. So breaking line of sight first is key, but after it checks your last known position, it will start searching the surrounding area for a bit. If you can't manage to escape the crawler, it's going to take 3 hits for it to kill you, but it attacks really quickly. You'll be dead in under 2 seconds. To kill it, I made it really hard because your first thought should always be to run away. It has a really small burnable hitbox on its head, and you have to burn it for a while to kill it. It's nearly impossible to consistently hit while it's chasing you because its head moves around a lot, so you have to find a way to get it to stop moving in order to kill it. The crawler has a spawn weight of 3 because it's very lethal, it's fast, and it's hard to kill. I always had this idea in the back of my head to add a creature that only appears when you shine your light on it. Then I naturally thought, what if this creature doesn't like to see light, so it disables nearby electronics just like some of the monster perks in PvP. So this all combined into one idea, the storm bird. A storm because lightning disables the electronics, and a bird because the idea of a bird larger than the size of a human has always been a little scary to me. I did my own 3D modeling and texturing for most of the creatures in this game, this one included, and even though I tried to make this one scary, I feel like it ended up a little bit goofy. The storm bird is just a floating pair of eyes when it's roaming around. If it does see you, it'll passively follow you around. It's only when you accidentally or on purpose shine your light in its direction that it will get angry and create a storm. The storm will darken the environment and slow down everyone inside it. You can also be damaged by the random lightning strikes within the storm. It'll take 2 lightning strikes to kill you. Also, its whole body is revealed to you when the storm is active, so this is your chance to burn and kill it. The thing is, at the beginning of a storm, all the electronics within a big radius around the bird are disabled, but the flash gun that you use to trigger the storm in the first place is almost definitely disabled, making this the only creature that requires a teammate to kill. The storm bird has a spawn weight of 2, because it's easy to avoid if you know what you're doing, and it's somewhat easy to kill if you have a teammate, but it is still lethal, and it does slow you down and disable your electronics. We've been playing with the same scanner since the beginning of this game. This gave me lots of time to figure out how to make it better, starting with increasing the range. It now scans up to 70 meters, but this is also because the zone size increased. I also made it so that it scans in every direction, just so you can gather more info quickly. I also made an up and down indicator for when the objects are above or below you. Before, the scanner would only display the distance and elevation of the closest object to you, but it would say the exact distance and elevation. The new scanner doesn't tell you the exact info, but it tells you a rough estimate for all the objects instead of just one. I also added a designated progress bar along the bottom of the scanner, so when you're scanning it displays the refresh rate, but if you're playing a tape it displays the played time. Loops are still displayed on the main screen. There's 2 new little displays on the right side of the scanner. The top one displays game info, like the game mode, objective progress, and time remaining. The display under that is the player counter, so it shows you how many players are humans, ghosts, or monsters. These little displays remove the need for hand tattoos. I did like the idea of hand tattoos, I just never felt like I did it right. And the idea of doing it properly sounded like too much work. I really wanted to find a way to properly project all that information onto a skin mesh because it kind of bothered me that all the info was just hovering above the skin. I would also have to make sure that this new solution would have to work on all future characters. Also, the images that I used for the tattoos were a little abstract, making them hard to understand, and they weren't properly representing what they meant. The human, ghost, and monster tattoos were alright, but the monster image wasn't inclusive of the mimic or any other monster that I add in the future. The game timer was represented as an hourglass, which meant you can't exactly know how much time is left, you just have a rough estimate. And for game modes, all I had was the fruit icon, which just displayed how much fruit you captured. I was really thinking about adding special tattoos for each game mode to remind you of what objective you were playing and also display the progress, but again, it was a little too abstract. Moving all this info onto the scanner just makes sense, and it worked really well. All the info was legible and clear. Another amazing feature that the scanner got in this update is the radio. Bring the microphone close to your mouth to start broadcasting your voice to every human and ghost. I have always wanted to add this feature, and making the PVE update kind of forced me to do it. But I also kind of wanted to do it because the voice chat service I was using before, Vivox, started preventing the recording of other players' voices, which kind of sucks for anyone that's making videos about this game. So I switched to this new voice chat service called Dissonance. It also lets me stream the audio through Fmod, which is the base system that Nightmare Tag uses to handle all of its sound effects. Now I can actually add voice effects, which is important to have when making a radio feature. Players should know when a voice is coming through a radio, so I added an effect for that. And I also added an effect when players are ghosts or monsters or a monster in seeker mode. I also added a really simple muffled effect when players are talking around a corner or behind a wall. Also, every zone has its own reverb effect, which adds a little bit of immersion, so I'm very glad I switched to this new voice chat service. Adding star windows for the creature display opened up the possibility to display more info at the end of a game. There's the main scoreboard, which displays everyone's total score and the end result of the game. But now I'm tracking kills, revives, objective scores for every player, which can be displayed on separate windows. So using the star under the scoreboard will list every player. You select a player to spawn the window with that player's stats. And when you're holding a window, you can press trigger to switch between human and monster stats. You'll see exactly who and how many times that player has killed or revived someone, and a breakdown of their total score. But in PvE, the scoreboard and all the score windows display different info. The main scoreboard will say what level you reached, whether you ran out of time, everyone died, or you reached the max level, and under that, it'll have a bar graph of all the creatures that you scanned. If it says 0, that means the creature killed you, but you weren't able to scan it. Beside that bar graph, there's another bar graph which tells you how much new info you got for each creature. The star under the scoreboard will actually display all the creature names instead of all the player names. Select one of the creatures to spawn in a star window, which includes all the states that you scanned, how long you scanned each state for, a list of all the new info that you unlocked, and it also says the death and kill count for that round. I ended up rewriting the entire score system to make this scoreboard happen, but I think it was worth it because it makes the game feel a lot more complete. I also did some minor changes to the game and map voting just so they match the style of the new scoreboard. Also, I've simplified the interaction on voting so that new players could understand it easier, also moving it from a 2-step interaction to a 1-step interaction. So instead of spawning in the object, grabbing the object and putting it on the voting pedestal, you actually just spawn in the object on the voting pedestal, and you don't have to grab it, it just counts as a vote. The burning system is core to the game, and I find myself constantly tweaking it, so here are the current changes that I've made. Burn traps now affect more than just player monsters. This was added because some creatures should be affected by burn traps, like monkeys and fish are now affected by them. There's also some objects that can be burned by traps now, like entity eyes and frozen entities. I did try revive heads for a little bit, but it made it too easy to revive, so I removed it. Also, burn traps no longer do a static 90% burn damage. Now they quickly heat up the object to the temperature that they're currently at, plus a 20% boost to any player monster. This feels a lot more balanced because you have to spend more time setting up your trap for it to do more damage. I also changed the instant burn feature. This would only affect player monsters, but its intention was to quickly apply damage to a monster when a beam first hits its face. This was originally added because the game is so fast paced that you never got a good amount of time to properly apply damage before the monster got to you. but I found that it was way too easy to get that instant damage if the beam just has to hit the monster for a single frame. Whenever I was playtesting as a monster with experienced players, I was constantly getting blinded, and the game should be more about running and hiding if you're a human. Beams should only ever be used to do coordinated attacks with your team, or if you have a good window of time to apply damage, usually if the monster was chasing someone else. So instead of instantly applying damage, when the beam first hits a monster, it activates a 3-second window for damage boosting. Without the damage boost, it takes a full 6 seconds to completely burn and blind the monster. But if the monster is resting at 0 damage, the first time that it's hit with a beam will activate that 3-second window where burn damage is tripled. So if you can consistently beam them within that window, it actually only takes 2 seconds for you to reach 100% burned. And having just one other teammate makes that 1 second, and 2 teammates makes that under a second. But you must wait until the monster is fully recovered before activating that damage boost window again. So burn and escape is the best play. One more thing I added to the burn system was just make sure that every burnable object indicates when it's burned. And I mainly do this by increasing the emissive texture on that object. But some objects are emissive already, like the fish, or some objects don't look right with an emissive texture. So for objects like that, I've added a smoke particle effect. I had to update the main lobby to include a new area to join PVE games, which I'm calling Nightmare Run. So there's Nightmare Tag to join PvP games, and Nightmare Run to join PVE games. Adding this new area gave me some time to upgrade the visuals across the entire main lobby. I made the signs brighter above each area because they were really hard to read before. I also added more details, changed some of the textures and lighting, and now the place feels a lot more complete. Also, it's important to note that the human tutorial got a complete rework. Some of the information needed to be updated because of all these changes. Also, the game will auto-start you in the human tutorial if it's your first time ever playing. So to make sure this tutorial is informative and as minimal as possible is important to get right, and I'm always looking for feedback here. I also added a new doorway in the tutorial area for the Nightmare Run demo. I needed this because creating a Nightmare Run lobby requires general admission. Joining a lobby is always free, but hosted lobbies use a Unity service that costs money, so I got a paywall it. Again, this just means that only one player needs to buy general admission for all their friends to enjoy it. Other than that, general admission has remained the same. Capture the Fruit was a lot of players' least favorite game mode, but some people saw the potential in it, and I still do. But it wasn't quite there, and I wanted to focus on the new PVE game modes, so I took it out until I thought of a proper rework. My main problem is that most people didn't really understand how to play the game, and even if you did know, you didn't have that much information on what was happening during the game. It was mainly that feeling of disconnection from your team. It was really hard to communicate in-game to strategize who was attacking and who was defending, and there wasn't even a proper way to display your team's score. I know I could just display that on the scanner now, and that would have solved that problem, but the feeling of disconnection from your team is a harder issue to solve, so I just put it aside to focus on PvE. That wraps up all the major changes. There's a lot of little things I skipped over, and if you're really interested, I'll link the complete changelog in the description. I also want to end by shouting out and thanking all the playtesters that helped throughout this update. I say this every time, but I really wouldn't have made it this far without them. So if you want to know what I'm working on next, join the playtests. And with that, I'll see you in the next devlog.